Hey everyone, my name is Matt Romanchik, and I am the founder and host of The Conscious Vibe. This is the podcast where we discuss how the average person out there is trying to be more conscious in the world. I would like to welcome you to this conscious earth. Shout out to John Arn for that awesome opening track. Thank you for submitting that. For that and all the other music featured on this podcast, you can search The Conscious Vibe on YouTube and SoundCloud, and you'll hear all of that. If you would like your music to be featured on the show, just shoot me an email at theconsciousvibe@gmail.com. And yes, I know on YouTube right now it's called The Conscious Summer. I changed the name based on a little intuitive whim, but I'll be changing that back as soon as Google lets me change it back to The Conscious Vibe again. In this podcast, I would like to discuss the intersections between spirituality, wisdom, science, everyday life, health, art, music, really anything that's inspiring to other people. This isn't really about pushing my personal viewpoints on others, but it's more about diving into the passions and beliefs of everyone else. At the end of the day, it's about how we can all be better people. My guest this week is Alvaro Romao. He is a shamanic practitioner. He's been studying and practicing shamanism for over a decade now. This part is a bit more of an introduction. This is going to be a multi-part episode, maybe 5 or 6 parts, because we get into such a lengthy discussion. In the second part, we get into detail discussing the use of plant medicine, specifically that of ayahuasca. I would just like to point out we do not condone the illegal use of substances. You can learn more about Alvaro and his practice at njshaman.com, where he offers classes for shamanic healing, sound healing, retreats, and drum circles. This episode is sponsored by Burke Superfoods and Burke and Lucky Chewy Yoga Clothing. Burke Superfoods, nourishment for the spiritual warrior. By the way, have you ever heard of the band Nako and Medicine for the People?
Yes, I have.
I imagine you like them then.
Yes, I do.
They're so good. I've just been like rocking out to them all day.
Yeah, it's like shaman rock.
Yeah, they're just amazing, really inspiring songs. I love the message. Let's start by just basically give us an idea of who you are, who you consider yourself to be. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So about me, I'm a shamanic practitioner. I've been practicing now for about 15 years with kind of a mix of Peruvian shamanism, Australian shamanism, Native American spirituality, and also I practice Mayan shamanism as well. For me, my spiritual way of life is my life. It's very important to me. I am also someone who loves to play video games and listen to music and have a normal everyday life, but also finding that balance between the two worlds of, all right, this is one hat and that's the other hat, and then put both hats on at the same time. A big part of my life is being a servant to the community, being a person that can be here to help receive healing for people, also for guidance and as friendships. I find it really important in life to be a compassionate person to anybody and everybody that I possibly can, and to live my life as honest and truthful and humble as I possibly can.
Now, I think a lot of people who think about this kind of stuff, especially spiritual practices like shamanism, they find that to be sort of something that's like way outside the realm of just being a normal person, right? So the fact that you're someone like you would be able to basically, like you said, play video games and be just an everyday normal human being, and then do things like communicate with the spirit world, so to speak. How would you assure other people that that can be done? Because one of my fears in the past was that having those kinds of ideas would obviously not make me very acceptable in society, and that I even feared that I'd be going crazy for a little while, you know, because a lot of times that's stuff crazy people talk about. So how is that something you managed to do, to basically juggle the two worlds, like you said?
For me, one of the most important things I like to tell people is this work or this practice something that you want, or is it something that you're being called to? If you are looking in books and watching videos and be like, hey, I want to know more about shamanism and I want to be a shaman, then the intent is a little skewed. For people like myself and many others, it's more of a calling, and it's just something that you feel deep within your soul and your bones, something that you just can't really explain. For the average person, shamanism is way out of their comfort zones, and a lot of people can look at it as dark or something negative, but it's not. It's very beautiful. Do people sometimes perceive me as crazy? Sure, I don't care. Let them. That's their opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion, but I know that I'm not. And I know that I come from a place of this being a calling rather than something that I chose.
Kind of like it chose you.
Exactly.
For people who don't really know much about it, how would you describe shamanism?
Well, one thing that people really have a misconception of shamanism is they immediately apply it to Native American spirituality. They associate the Native American culture as being shamanism, and it's not. They're two completely different worlds. Like if you were to meet a medicine man or a medicine woman from the Lakota Nation or Cherokee Nation, they're not shamans. They are medicine people. And there's a big difference between the two that a lot of people kind of think they're the same. So like a lot of people who study with us or come to see us are like, oh, I have this Native American heritage in me and I want to be a shaman. I'm like, well, that's great, but Native Americans here in North America, we're not practicing shamanism. They practice a completely different type of spiritual practice.
Yeah, what you described, Peruvian Mayan, that's very, very different from Native American culture.
Yeah, I mean, the word shaman comes from tuva, and what it means is to heat oneself up.
Really?
And yeah,
shamanism
is from Tuva, Mongolia. That is where the roots really come from and hail from. And then there's different parts of the world that practice shamanism, and they're all really doing the same thing but different, which fascinates me. The anthropological aspect of shamanism I just find truly fascinating, how a medicine person in Australia was doing the same thing thousands and thousands of years ago of someone that was in Tuva or in Central America. And
like what kinds of things were they doing?
Communicating with the spirits, doing healing work, honoring the 4 directions, honoring the 4 elements. And they were all doing the same thing, and they didn't know that each other existed.
Right.
There's something there about the communication with the spirits, that those are the ones who are the teachers. Those are the ones who are our guides, and guiding all these medicine people through the ages, regardless of where they were in this world. I think it's just truly fascinating.
Now, someone like myself, I feel a strong connection with nature that I don't feel threatened by, because I think as long as you try, and I think the key word is try to be a friend to nature, then you're okay. But I did my last podcast, I spoke to a Christian minister, and someone in the Christian community would describe, which I'm sure you've experienced this a lot, would describe something like shamanism as paganism, which has a lot of negative connotations in Christianity, and communicating with dark entities. They would describe it as dangerous and probably demonic work. What is your retort to that?
I think it also depends on the type of Christian person you're speaking with.
Right.
Like for instance, many years ago, my partner and I, we owned a metaphysical center in New Jersey, and right down the road from us were a couple centers. They were for nuns and priests, and they were some of our best and most beautiful customers that would come into our shop. Having all these sisters coming into Sacred Circle, which was the name of our store, and open to all of this. It was just, it was so really fascinating awesome to me that these nuns would come in, and they weren't in their habits, they were in plain clothes. I could always tell a nun when they walked in because they had this beautiful energy. And they respected us. They understood it. And these nuns also, they were Reiki practitioners. I mean, they're the Catholic Church, the Christian way is actually much more open than we think. But it also depends on who you're speaking to and what their beliefs are. Like, I think more of a Catholic priest is going to be much more strict with those beliefs on shamanism than, say, a Catholic nun. But to answer your question in a little bit more detail, it's educating the person on really what it is that we do. A lot of people just think, hey, shamanism is dark, that it is evil, that it is pagan. It's none of the above. All we're doing is we're all communicating with the same higher power. Some people call it God, some people call it Allah, and some people call it a tree. But it's about belief. I think with every religion and every spiritual practice, belief is the key factor. And if all these different ways of life, of spirituality or religion, have a belief, then it's all beautiful. It's just opening up people's minds and views that we're all doing the same thing, just in a different way.
Now, some Christian ministers would definitely argue that that's not true, I think like for some major, not even just Christian, let's say like any religion, like religious fundamentalist would argue that there are specific ways, and that like not following that specific way can open one up to negative influences.
And that's dogma, and dogma is a big part of religion, and and that you can either believe what you're being told, and this is what the Bible says, this is what your priest says, and there's nothing wrong with that, really. I mean, if that's the way people want to believe, then that's their belief system, and I'm totally okay with that. But belief, that's key. And Jesus Christ, in my opinion, was a shaman. He performed miracles, he performed healing, he did some miraculous things. Of course, someone in the Christian religion isn't going to refer to Jesus Christ as a shaman, but in my opinion, he was.
So how did you get into this?
I was born in Newark. I only spent, I don't know, maybe a year of my life there, and then we moved to Menlo Park. I was there till probably about the age of 9, and then we moved to Ocean County, down in the Pinelands. That's kind of where my life kind of began. That's where I started to really find who I was. You know, where we lived at the time, back then, it was nothing but pine trees and woods, and I would just spend hours upon hours in the woods looking for the Jersey Devil and finding, you know, cool little bones and rocks and shells, and just spending hours upon hours by myself in these beautiful woods of Ocean County. You know, I was a pretty solitary kid. You know, I had friends, but I was always kind of an outcast. Never really fit in, never was into sports. I would rather pretend that I was Yoda and Dagobah.
Yeah, that was me too.
And then, you know, as I got older, I teenager, I was, you know, one of the, I'm 47, so back in the 80s, you know, you had the whole, you know, punk rock, new wave kind of scene, and that's where I kind of fit into the misfits, and I started to dabble a little bit with like tarot cards and things of that nature, and I had a fascination for something, but I just, at that point in my life, didn't know anybody or had the tools to really figure it out, because there was no one in my world that was like who I was. As I got older, went to college and went to business school, and actually, I mean, after I graduated, for 14 years of my life, I worked in New York City as a vice president for a women's shoe and handbag company.
Wow, that's quite a change.
So yeah, you know, I worked in New York City. I commuted, traveled all around the country, around the world for business, and made a boatload of money doing it, and then found my partner Adam. He was this really cool spiritual kind of guy, and here I am, this kind of musician who's also a businessman, but we just kind of, you know, we had really similar views and values in life, and we connected and we honored each other, and he never forced his spiritual practice, because he also practiced shamanism, onto me. And so, you know, for many years of our companionship, he would do his spiritual thing and I would do my thing. And there were many years, like, you know, a long time ago, that like he would be having these shamanic drum circles in our house, and I would be upstairs playing video games. I wanted nothing to do with it. The participants and him would be like, hey, you know, you're a drummer, you're a percussionist, and, you know, we're drumming, you know, and I'm just like, nah, I have no desire. So I'd be upstairs, you know, playing Tomb Raider or Soul Reaver or something like that. And then we took this vacation to Belize. It started off as just a regular 2-week vacation. You know, both of us had never been really to that part of the world, and I had this experience there where for the first time in my life, I felt the spirit of a land and the power of the ancestors, and I really didn't know what the hell I was even feeling or understanding, and it was very overwhelming and powerful, and because that part of the world is so untouched and it's so sacred and it's so active with this energy. And I didn't really say much to him, and then when we got back, a week or so later, I said to him, I think I want to start pursuing this shaman stuff, this shaman thing.
What was it about that experience? Was it just being there?
It was being there.
I would like to take a moment to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Burke Superfoods and Burke and Lucky Chewy yoga clothing. Burke Superfoods has a pretty extensive product line of nutritional and health supplements, but I wouldn't even call them supplements. They're mostly just organic, real, and vegan food that's pretty great stuff. They got everything from chia seeds to matcha root powder to cacao. One of the things I really enjoyed of theirs was their vegan protein powder, which was actually probably the best veggie protein powder that I've ever had. And I'm not saying that because they're helping me out. It was actually really, really good. You can check them out at apollogenesis.com. Burke Superfoods, nourishment for the spiritual warrior.
So then we got back. I had looked up online and I saw that the Foundation for Shamanic Studies was doing this weekend introduction to shamanism at the Open Center in New York City. And I'm like, I'm going to sign up for this class. I want to see what this is all about. From that point on, I just didn't stop. I just kept pursuing this journey and this path, and eventually left my career as a business person in New York City to completely dedicate myself and my life to this journey.
So it must have been really transformative then for you to think, wow, I need to actually start changing my entire life and make a career change. And basically what you're describing, who you were before and then what you transitioned into, that's a big transition.
Absolutely. It's like taking a vow of poverty. Going from making 6 figures to making 2 figures, but it's not about the money. And I realized that, and I'm like, you know what, I can't not do this. It was just so strong within my soul that I just knew this is something I got to pursue. If it works, great. If it doesn't, great as well. I never looked back.
What did it feel like? Did going back to your old life just... Because I'm thinking of experiences I've had and that other people I know have had, where when you make that kind of connection with, let's just say, something beyond ordinary reality, going back to what you were doing before becomes more and more painful until you make some sort of shift.
Now for me, yes. When I go through different experiences, I kind of can experience that. Back then, I don't think I really understood it enough to really, have this very powerful spiritual experience. But then going back into my everyday life, it was actually pretty easy. For myself, I'm not too much in my head. I can separate the two pretty easily and not in a depressed or dark place if I have this experience and have to then, travel back to New Jersey. It's just a process of being able to separate the two and accept the two, and not being like, I had this powerful experience and I want it so bad that I don't want it to go away. I also understand that we're living in the year 2017 and that our way of life isn't like it was thousands of years ago when people were indigenous shamans in the jungles and forests around the world. So it's just accepting today and incorporating both worlds together.
You said you started taking a course, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened from there?
It was called The Way of the Shaman, and...
Does that have anything to do with the book?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
I've read the book.
Michael Harner.
Okay.
It was his course through the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. So from there, they have all these other different programs and intensives, and two of my mentors, Nan Moss and David Corbin, from the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, were these two teachers. And my partner Adam had also known them and taken, this course with them, and so they kind of knew who I was. So then, the next step from that was this 2-week intensive in Virginia, and so I took that. And then the next step from there is a 3-year apprenticeship program, and I took that. And then I kind of stopped my studies with the foundation to really pursue a much more organic pursuit of the spirits and shamanism. It's a good catalyst, and it was a good start for me, but it's through all those classes really is not the foundation of who I am as a practitioner now. It was a good introduction.
Right.
And it was 5 years of my life doing all that, but the medicine that I have within me really has come from my travel around the world, studying with different indigenous people and working with different plant medicines and stuff like that.
This is the end of the first part of interview with shamanic practitioner Alvaro Romao. To hear a lot more discussion about his practice and his experiences, stay tuned for future episodes. You can learn more about him at njshaman.com. If you would like to join in on the conversation, feel free to join our Facebook group, The Conscious Vibe Tribe. Until next time, stay conscious.